What's up, everybody? This video is not going to be for everyone. Um, the, uh, the subject material is going to be very popular. However, the details and the circumstances and the tools used are going to put some people a little bit on edge. And let me explain why. There's this unusual growing movement of, I don't want to use the term tearing down of our particular system, but it's become very popular to say, well, we'll just rip the pages off of the Constitution and the ratifications and amendments that we don't agree with, that we think may not have been ratified correctly, and we'll take the parts of the Constitution that we agree with and we'll hold them up, and the rest of them can just, I don't care. Our friend, a long-lost friend, Urban Combat Survivor, was kind of like that. You know, anything after the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments, that's going to be our thing, and the rest of the stuff, you don't even need it. Now, here's what's interesting. And the Federalist Papers talk about this. More specifically, the Anti-Federalists. The concerns that, I don't want to use the term founding fathers, but the dudes that were around after we had kicked England out, and well, we needed some government because we as a group of people exist in a world that sometimes there's quite a few things going on that takes all of us working together to resolve. And we use the term founding fathers as the guys that constructed our original framework in a way that hopefully would continue the spirit and the existence of freedom that we believe they had at that time. Now, when you look at some of the fundamental debates that's existed since the beginning between anti-federalists and federalists, one of the chief ones of the anti-federalists, and I want to say, was it Hamilton maybe that had a problem with this? But it was a pretty smart dude. They were all smart dudes. And they were concerned that by just putting the terminology of privileges of an American citizen, then the potential framework would be there to allow somebody to say, well, this is just a legal allowance to the people of the nation. And this is why we do not agree with ratifying this system of government. Fast forward to today, and yeah, those dudes were pretty damn smart, because somebody's gonna take the privileges and immunities and deem them as exclusive. Although, when one constitutional expert reads something and he says, well, these privileges and immunities are exclusive, and another constitutional expert says, no, 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 I've read the Constitution, I've read the amendments, I've read the Federalist Papers, and more or less, I've come to the conclusion that if a freedom is not listed or specifically prohibited in the Constitution and subsequent laws, then you are free to do it. Fundamentally, we are a free people. That is listed over and over and over again. There are going to be people for whatever reason, who will not want you to understand that. either because they want you to think their way or just see things through the same perspective that they do. I personally believe that it may be well-intentioned people that have followed their path to certainty. Problem with following a path to certainty is that you try to squeeze information through your hole of understanding, which I love that term that you came up with, Mike. I love that. And it's so very true, because the earliest thing we were taught is going to be maybe the foundation of all of our knowledge, and it's within our nature. So everything you hear after the first thing is something that you try to squeeze through that little hole, and whatever fits, and whatever doesn't. It doesn't mean a person's not smart. It doesn't mean that their logic process isn't correct. It just means that their biases sometimes show in their analysis, and it's just a way of it. Now, I think this video, which has maybe the longest introduction that I've ever made, um, as it speaks about the Second Amendment right of the people to keep and bear arms for a well-regulated militia, so on and so forth. It speaks to so many things that people have on the table. Does the federal government hold sway over the rights of a state, over the rights of a community, over the rights of a township, over the rights of a city, and vice versa? I'm not going to get into my opinion on this video. What I'm going to get into is the tools and the process that the United States Supreme Court used in order to allow for the reinstatement of Second Amendment rights to a resident of Chicago. Now, the decision of this court was issued on June 28th, 2010. The manner that the Supreme Court used to issue this declaration against Chicago is, of course, the 14th Amendment and the privileges and immunities clause allowed for by the 14th Amendment. Now, right away, hopefully you see the reason why I had such a long introduction on this. 14th Amendment isn't very popular with the libertarians right now. And personally, I believe that comes down to a judgment, just like what we were discussing, where does a law only exist to restrict a freedom, or is a law simply used to preserve a freedom? Fact of the matter is, it's not so simple, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And the more that we study decisions of the Supreme Court, and the more we really read how they came to their conclusions, the greater our understanding of how the laws can work. Imagine law like a matter of market and perspective and enlightenment. Maybe you get an enlightened guy, maybe you don't. I've got the decision here in all of its 9-page glory. The syllabus from this case is 214 pages. Within it, though, it talks about some previous usages of the 14th Amendment. But let's put the 14th Amendment in context really quick, because this is important. The Civil War did change our land. Us in the South, tongue-in-cheek, describe the Civil War as the Northern War of aggression, and we're big fans of of a confederation type government. However, what do you do when a particular state, because enough of the people who move there begin to oppress the rights of the citizens through laws? We use the Second Amendment right here in this case because it's very tangible. Once again, either you have an item or you do not. Those who are for firearm ownership are going to see the Second Amendment as meaning that we get to have a particular device. Those who are against it find other definitions for that. So you take a state who gets enough people together where they're able to say, okay, well, this privilege of a United States citizen doesn't go here. What sense does that make? And what does that have to do with the Civil War? Well, directly following the Civil War, after the surrender of the Confederate States of America, all of a sudden there were a great many more American citizens. Why weren't they American citizens before? The Dred Scott case, declaring that certain human beings in certain areas can be considered property. So in some states, it was okay to have a human being as property, but in others, a human being was an American citizen. So Congress ratified a 14th Amendment to the Constitution, among several others, but let's focus on the 14th here. It had what's called a Privileges and Immunities Clause. It's very popular right now to see many, hopefully well-meaning libertarian organizations, and in some case anarchist organizations, see the 14th Amendment as a process by which the United States makes its populace subject. Again, there's two ways to look at a law. Imagine for a moment that you go ahead and read the 14th Amendment, and within that 14th Amendment, there's this clause that says the privileges and the immunities of a citizen of the United States of America extends to all of its states. To me, it's a very obvious tool for the preservation of liberty. You know, what's the point of being an American citizen if I don't have these rights guaranteed by the Bill of Rights? I mean, there's states in this union, and Mike, you know from being in Massachusetts, there's states in this union that take a big old king shit on the Bill of Rights, and that doesn't make sense. So the Supreme Court and the petitioners utilized the 14th Amendment and the Privileges and Immunities Clause in order to preserve the freedom of a citizen of the United States who lived in Chicago. Pretty cool, huh? I like it because my personal beliefs, I believe that citizens of our nation should be able to own and possess firearms. People who don't like firearms and people who believe that firearms cause more harm than good won't think so. You know, they'll believe that in our community we should be able to prohibit such things. But it's not so easy. And here's why. We have this system of checks and balances. Well, the reason for it is so that a group can't just railroad their policies, so that enough level heads can see the information and it becomes difficult to just run something through without thinking about it. When you only have to convince a small group, then it's much easier than it is when you have to convince a larger group. And that, Mike, is why it's important for you to vote. When you have only 40% of the people voting, you don't have to convince too many people that you're not an asshole in order to get elected now, do you? Now, an argument against